Have you ever heard a line in a song that just stays with you? Something that sounds simple at first, but the older you get, the more it hits. For me, that line came from Kid Cudi's song, Love. He says, all of the stories, the hero gets lonely. But when I first heard it, I didn't think much of it. But as I grew up, as life started to hit harder, I realized just how true it is. Because in every story, in every movie, in every legend, the hero always gets lonely. Why? Because after the war is over, after the mission is complete, and everyone else moves on, the hero is left alone with himself. And sometimes that's the hardest battle of all. That's what I wanted to talk about today, why the hero always gets lonely. How it connects to one of the most misunderstood fictional characters ever written, John Rambo. There's this quote I once read: the warlike man attacks himself in times of peace. That's one of the deepest truths about human nature. When you spend your whole life fighting, whether it's literal war, emotional pain, poverty, trauma, or just the grind of survival, your mind learns one thing: conflict equals purpose. You wake up every day with something to push against, something to fight through, something to survive. And then one day, it's over. The world goes quiet. You finally get a little peace. But instead of feeling relieved, you feel lost. Because now there's no more battle outside of you. Your fight turns inward. You start attacking yourself. The same drive that helped you survive becomes the same energy that tears you apart. That's what happens to so many people, not just soldiers. Anyone who's ever lived in survival mode knows that peace can feel like a punishment. Because when you finally stop running, the silence catches up. And that's exactly what happened to John Rambo. Most people think of Rambo as some mindless action hero: explosions, guns, muscles, one liners. But the first movie, First Blood, is nothing like that. It's not a movie about war, it's a movie about what happens after war. Rambo is a Vietnam veteran. He's seen everything: death, loss, betrayal, pain that most people could never handle. He comes home expecting peace, expecting maybe a second chance at life. But instead of peace, he finds rejection. He finds a world that doesn't understand him. He's judged, harassed, told to move along like he doesn't belong anywhere. That's where the movie starts. Not with violence, but with loneliness. Rambo doesn't start the fight. The world starts it by refusing to accept him. And when he snaps, it's not because he's a monster. It's because he's broken. He's a man built for battle, dropped into a world that has no place for warriors anymore. At the end of First Blood, there's this scene that most people forget. Rambo breaks down crying in front of his old commander. He says things like, I had friends. I had all these guys. Now they're all gone. For me, civilian life is nothing. Out here, there's nothing. That last line, out here, there's nothing. That's loneliness in its purest form. Rambo survived at war, but he didn't survive the silence after it. Because pain didn't feel like peace, it felt like emptiness. All his strength, all his training, all his discipline, it suddenly meant nothing. He had no mission, no brotherhood, no reason to wake up. That's the price of being a hero. When the fight is over and everyone else celebrates, the hero is left standing in the wreckage, wondering, what now? There's something about warriors, fictional or real, that we often misunderstand. We think they love violence, but in truth, most of them just don't know how to exist without struggle. That's what the quote means. The warlike man attacks himself in times of peace. It's not that he wants to suffer, it's that he doesn't know who to be when he's not fighting. The warrior's identity is built around chaos. When the chaos disappears, he creates it inside himself. He starts questioning everything, picking at his own scars, starting arguments, sabotaging relationships, doubting his worth. He needs friction because friction feels like life. It's tragic, but it's real, and it's not just Rambo. It's the athlete who retires and spirals. It's the soldier who comes home and feels invisible. It's the person who's worked so hard to survive that they've forgotten how to live. That's why all the stories say the hero gets lonely, because no one else understands that kind of emptiness. There's an addiction hidden inside every fighter, the addiction to purpose. When your whole life has been built around overcoming, you start to depend on struggle to feel alive. That's why so many people can't handle success or peace or stability. They get reckless. They start breaking things that are actually good for them, not because they want to, but because a part of them misses the chaos. It's like a soldier who can't sleep without the sound of helicopters, or a hustler who doesn't know how to relax without feeling lazy. Rambo is the perfect example of this. He tries to disappear, to live quietly, but something always pulls him back into the fight because war doesn't live out there anymore. It lives in him. And that's the part nobody warns you about when you overcome something huge. Peace can feel unbearable if you haven't learned how to live in it. The truth is, most of us are more like Rambo than we realize. We fight silent battles every day: depression, doubt, pressure, expectations. But we fight to prove ourselves, to survive, to belong. And when we finally catch a break, we feel this weird emptiness. You think, why don't I feel happy yet? Why does peace feel so uncomfortable? It's because your brain's still wired for war. It's used to running, pushing, striving. It doesn't know how to just be. And that's why a lot of people sabotage themselves when things are going too well. It's not weakness, it's conditioning. You're not broken. You're just used to surviving, not living. That's the loneliness of the hero. It's not just that you're alone, it's that no one else understands what it took to get here and how strange it feels to have made it. Peace sounds beautiful until you realize it requires surrender. And for a fighter, surrender feels like death. That's why so many heroes can't rest. They've been needed for so long that when they're finally not, they feel useless. It's the same for anyone who's spent years grinding, hustling, sacrificing. And when you finally reach the top, you expect happiness, but instead, you find silence. And that silence feels heavier than all the noise that came before it. Rambo didn't just lose a war, he lost a reason to exist. And that's what peace can feel like: a world that no longer needs your strength. But here's the truth: peace doesn't mean doing nothing. Peace doesn't mean you stop fighting. It means you choose what's worth fighting for. The problem isn't that warriors exist, it's that we stop giving them missions once the external battles end. If you don't give your fight direction, it'll turn inward, and you'll become your own enemy. But if you redirect it, if you use some of that same fire for something meaningful, it becomes creation instead of destruction. Rambo never learned how to do that. He tried to disappear instead of transform. And that's why he never found peace. But we can learn from that. We can take our pain, our restlessness, our drive, and aim it at something that builds instead of breaks. Every hero's story ends the same way. Not with victory, but with loneliness. Because the world moves on, and they're left to rebuild themselves. But what if that's the point? What if the hero's real mission isn't just saving others, learning how to save themselves after the battle's done? That's where growth happens. When you realize your war is over, but your purpose isn't. When you learn how to be strong in stillness. When you stop needing enemies to prove your worth. That's what peace really is. It's not the end of your story, it's the next evolution of it. So when Kid Cudi said, all of his stories, the hero gets lonely, he wasn't talking about sadness. He was talking about transformation. Because loneliness isn't just isolation, it's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. The hero gets lonely because he's the only one still awake when everyone else has gone to sleep. He's the only one wrestling with the silence after the war. He's he's the only one learning how to exist without a sword in his hand. But you're in that stage. If you're in your quiet after the storm, remember this: you're not broken. You're just between battles. You're learning how to live after surviving. And that's what makes you powerful. Because anyone can fight when the world is on fire, but it takes a true hero to find peace when it's finally quiet. So, yeah, all of the stories, the hero gets lonely. But maybe loneliness isn't a punishment. Maybe it's the beginning of peace. Maybe it's the universe saying, you don't need a war anymore. You just need yourself. And when you can finally sit in that, when you can look in the mirror and not need a battle to define you, that's when you stop being the hero and start being human again.